We're following the breaking news tonight from New Hampshire. Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida dropped out of the Republican presidential race, and now it's down to former President Donald Trump and former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley. On the Democratic side, this week, the Biden campaign is launching a national abortion rights tour to mark the 51st anniversary of Roe v. Wade. Tomorrow, Vice President Harris travels to Wisconsin, where lawmakers have introduced a 14-week abortion ban. Then, on Tuesday, the Biden-Harris ticket will be in Virginia to hold their first joint re-election rally. Reproductive rights are expected to be a key issue in the presidential race, and abortion advocates just headlined the 4th annual Women's March in Washington, D.C. Moments ago, I spoke to Democratic Senator Amy Klobuchar of Minnesota about putting abortion on the ballot and got her reaction to news of the shakeup in the Republican presidential race today. Ron DeSantis dropped out. Senator Klobuchar, welcome back to the Sunday Show.
Well, thanks, Jonathan. It's great to be back on with you.
So before we get to the big news we want to talk about, which is the 51st anniversary of Roe v. Wade, just as someone who's run for president, I'd love your reaction to Florida Governor Ron DeSantis dropping out of the Republican race for the presidential nomination.
Well, I guess in some way, for those of us who've been watching this for the past year and seen the control Donald Trump has on his own party, I think the thing that surprises me is it was just 56,000 people who voted for Trump in the caucuses in Iowa, but now this is starting to seem inevitable. And Donald Trump, I think we all know what this means, the chaos, whether it comes to abortion rights, whether it comes to democracy. But the thing that I think a lot of Republicans were looking for was an alternative. That's why DeSantis ran. That's why he had supporters. And now we're just back where we started with the same guy.
Right. So, as you well know, Governor DeSantis signed into law a strict 6-week abortion ban in his state, in Florida. Talk about that in the context of the 51st anniversary of Roe v. Wade and how such a restriction could shape President Biden's messaging on abortion in the coming campaign.
Well, I think this is one of the issues, right? Not exactly differentiating himself on an issue that's so key to people across this country. When you look at the numbers, 70, 80% of the people of this country, and that includes those numbers of looking at Republicans, they support a woman's right to make her own decision about her health care instead of politicians. And you see Donald Trump doubling down on this, Republicans doubling down on this issue, going way back when he talked about how a woman could be punished for making such a decision in 2016 to now, when he has continued to focus on his position. And I believe that the people of this country want something different, and that includes moderate Republicans and independents. And I think we know why. It is the 51-year anniversary of a decision that guaranteed that women would have control over their own destiny. And now here we are 51 years later, and a number of women in so many states have no control over their destiny when it comes to their health care. It's a shocking development, and it has had disastrous consequences. I just heard the story of how a woman from North Carolina had to go to D.C. To get an abortion and stayed in a homeless shelter. Even with states that have abortion rights in place, these Supreme Court decisions on mifepristone, which would ban the abortion drug, or a national abortion ban would have severe effects on every woman in this country.
Mm-hmm. Well, on the national abortion ban, Nikki Haley says Democrats are lying about the threat of a national abortion ban. Listen.
60 senators would never approve a ban on abortion. That's a fact. That's a fact. So why put out something that's implying something's going to happen to the American people that is a lie? That's never going to happen.
Senator, your reaction to those comments today?
You know, people can make these predictions, but I don't think a lot of those same people were saying Donald Trump was never going to be elected, and he was, or that there'd never be an insurrection, and there was. And so I think what you want to do is put in a president like Joe Biden, who's going to guarantee that we won't have a national abortion ban. I think you want to put in a president that would sign Roe v. Wade into law, and you want to put Democrats into office in both the House and the Senate that will guarantee that that can happen. So I look at it in totally the different way. I look at how can we move forward in the best possible way, and that is by having Joe Biden as president.
And one more question for you, Senator. Activists are trying to pass abortion rights amendments in 9 more states, including Florida, Missouri, and Nebraska. Why do you think these ballot measures have become such a powerful tool for protecting access?
Because of the results, because people turn out. It started in the prairies in Kansas. It then goes to Ohio, where a 10-point margin, people stand up for women's right to make their own decision about their health care. Wisconsin Supreme Court race by 10 points. These things are happening because we are with the people. And we are with where they want to go and where they want to go forward. And that also includes things like being willing to take on the pharmaceutical companies and getting people access to the Internet and actually building the infrastructure they need. And I think that last election, not just the midterm, but this last election in Kentucky, in the governor's race, Virginia legislature, that's my proof point when I hear people talk about this election. So I just think this is going to be a galvanizing issue. But I do want people to know that if you're in those states, like I am, where they do protect the right to a woman's right to make her own decision about their health care, this isn't all clear. It is murky if you put Republicans in office, and in fact, it's going to go the opposite way because these are people that race to the state houses to put in abortion bans. These are people who basically have been putting in the judges that have been making the Dobbs decision and the like. So people have to see it's a clear choice no matter what state you're in.